Hey everyone, another week, another episode of Just Hanging with the Nosebleed Seats. Eric Chiafalo, Zach Wolchuk. I'm Jared Sandler. You can catch Eric and Zach typically 7 to 11, but now the baseball season's in session after Rangers games when it's a night game. And if it's a day game, then probably more or less in their same slots, especially with off days as well. But we will all be together. We're going to have Just Hanging with the Nosebleed Seats after Rangers games for 15 minutes. So can't wait to talk about starting relievers and whatever other phrases we're going to invent talking Rangers baseball after the game.
It's the bullpen starter.
Bullpen starter, that's right.
Bullpen starter,
yeah,
which will be Joe Palumbo. Don't you worry, Jerry.
Yeah, it's the swaggiest guy in the league.
Hell yeah.
All right, so let's talk some Cowboys right now. Eric, you read. You're the best reader of all of us. Zach's struggling to read. I actually don't even try. So what words did you read recently?
Yeah, so I came across some good words, and I will translate them for you guys so that you guys can understand them. I'll do the heavy lifting. I will do the legwork, and you guys can just give me your thoughts if that's something you're capable of doing. And we head to Sharp Football Analysis, Warren Sharp. He's been on 105 Through the Fan plenty. He's probably the gold standard for football analytics. He's so good that teams outsource him. There's a handful of teams every NFL football season that outsource him on a week-to-week basis for him to crunch numbers and help them basically put game plans together. So that's how next level awesome this guy is. And so he recently came out with an article talking about quarterbacks and basically how many touchdowns they throw from outside the red zone. So you're basically your quote unquote big play, chunk play touchdown passes compared to how many touchdown passes they throw in the red zone. And obviously we know in the red zone, the field shrinks a little bit, windows get a little bit tighter. It can be more difficult. It really is more difficult to complete passes in the red zone. The field shrinks, defenses have less field to cover. And so it's a tough thing to do. You can be a really good quarterback and struggle in the red zone. And so when you look at some of the numbers that he came up with, first of all, Pat Mahomes is the gold standard for vertical touchdown passes being thrown. The dude's an absolute animal. But then you get to our guy, Dak Prescott, who is the next closest to Pat Mahomes in touchdown passes outside the red zone over the past two seasons. And Dak Prescott has 24 touchdown passes outside the red zone over the last two seasons. That's only second to Pat Mahomes. But this is what is interesting, and I'm curious y'all's thoughts. And for me, this just excites me even more that Jason Garrett and the Linehans and that entire staff is gone. Because hear this, when it comes to the Cowboys in the red zone, Prescott does not get the added short yardage passing touchdowns that some other passers do because Dallas simply does not throw a lot at all when in the red zone. Since Prescott entered the league in 2016, the Cowboys have ranked 29th in the league in red zone passing rate at under 50% and 30th in passing rate inside of the 10-yard line. So it's even more so once they get inside the 10-yard line, they're even less likely to want to throw the football. Even with Prescott having his best season throwing the football last year, Dallas still reverted to having Prescott hand the ball off near the end zone, ranking 30th in red zone passing rate just last season and 32nd, last in the league in passing rate inside of the 10-yard line.
Can I ask a question for clarification? Yeah. And obviously this wouldn't put them from 30th or 32nd to 7th, but does that take into account unplanned runs by Dak? Because it does seem like there are, a few plays, I don't know, for every 8 red zone dropbacks, it does seem like 1 or 2 of them result in Dak runs where maybe he drops back knowing that, it's not a design run, but he's going to pull the trigger quickly, if that makes sense.
So as far as I know, he's taking those plays into account. If Dak were to tuck it and run, he's still calling that was a designed pass that ultimately became a run. So I think that still counts towards the pass rate.
Got it. Okay.
I think.
Cool.
So anyways, we get to, let me see. So basically, since entering the league, Prescott has thrown 56 touchdowns to 6 interceptions in the red zone. So that's pretty good. 56 touchdowns to 6 interceptions in the red zone. That's a nice rate. So why are you practically last in the league in terms of pass rate? Why are you handcuffing your quarterback? And then even more so, to highlight how well Dak has done close to the end zone, inside the 5-yard line even. This is from our guy Adam JT13 on Twitter, and he notes that Dallas's pass rate, so now he's shrinking it down from the 1 or 2 yard line. So you're right there on the doorstep of the end zone. Dallas's pass rate from the 1 or 2 yard line is 17% since 2016. So since Dak Prescott has been the quarterback of the Cowboys, when they're on the 1 or 2 yard line, they throw the ball 17% of the time, which is last in the league over that time span. Dak has 8 attempts from the 1 or 2 yard line for his entire career. So his entire 4-year career, he's only thrown the ball 8 times from the 1 or 2 yard line. 4 quarterbacks had more than that just last season, and 19 quarterbacks have had more than that in the past 2 seasons. Dak has thrown it 8 times from the 1 or 2 yard line over the last 4. But Dak's touchdown percentage when throwing the ball from the 1 or 2 yard line ranks first in the NFL. Of those 8 passes that Dak has thrown from the 1 or 2 yard line, 7 of those have resulted in a touchdown. 87.5%.
Jared's going to have something on that sample size.
Small sample size, for sure. But what that tells me is, especially as you get even closer to the end zone, Dak's been really, really good. Again, small sample size, but from what we've seen, I don't see how the Cowboys can conclude our quarterback's not good at this, so we shouldn't be throwing the football. So I'll let you guys decide what you will, but for me, I'm kind of like, this is a positive because Dak has shown in the red zone 56 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions in his entire career, and then from the 1 or 2 yard line, 87.5%, number 1 in the league in terms of touchdown percentage when throwing the football. In my mind, he's plenty good enough to do it. He's just been handcuffed by the old school, crappy Amish football mentality of Jason Garrett. And maybe now with Mike McCarthy, they'll open things up in the red zone and allow themselves to be better than 15th or 18th, whatever they were in red zone touchdown percentage last year.
So I want to start with this quickly, Mr. Wolchuk. As far as the passing attempts from, like, let's just say inside the 4, all right, with, average yards per rush, if your 4 is like a reasonable number, so let's say from the 4. What's the biggest what's a big reason why you don't want to pass inside the 4, other than the fact that, you should be able to get a couple yards on the ground? It's probably, you don't want to make a mistake. There are a lot more variables for a mistake to happen, right?
Certainly.
What's one of Dak's greatest strengths?
Not making mistakes, not turning the football over. He's very smart, usually with the football.
So I would think that you'd want to take advantage of that dual threat that becomes way tougher to defend. And I hate to use like a Madden or NCAA football example, but I mean, when you know that the other team's going to run, it becomes a lot easier to go that goal line blitz A or whatever, where they shoot the gaps, with the 2 linebackers. And it's actually like not incredibly tough to stop. Well, it's no different in the NFL. I mean, if I'm on the 1 yard line and I know that the numbers are slanted the way they are for the Cowboys, the odds of me stopping you are slim. But so I'm going to just go all out because I don't have to worry about the pass. Or if I'm on the 5 yard, whatever it might be. I just think that you got a dual threat quarterback, especially one who doesn't go down easy. I'm not asking him to be Cam Newton and just sacrifice his body. But, like, it's not like Dak's a guy that you're going to be able to drive backwards easily. It just seems like, they're better off more often. I'm not saying exclusively. Like, you got Zeke. Zeke's awesome. Like, let's use Zeke. That's one area where you can use Zeke. And maybe that's another reason too, Eric. I think, why the numbers are what they are, because they are working with one of the best running backs in the league in an era where the 3-down running back isn't as much of a thing. But I'd still say that, like, you want to avoid trends, and it's not like you're working with Putsy McGee back there. Like, you got a quarterback who I think you can trust to make good decisions.
Big fan of Putsy McGee.
Dude, Putsy McGee throws a really good duck.
Man, his balls are great. Now, it's just not super surprising to me because I didn't think of it as there's no trust in Dak with this. My thought process is how have the Cowboys under Jason Garrett built this team? And it's you spent 3 first-round picks on the offensive line, you paid Lyle Collins, and then once you needed a guard, you spent a second-round pick on Connor Williams. Your resources are in your offensive line. That's how you've built this team. Not to mention you spent a 4th overall pick and then paid Ezekiel Elliott to be the best running back in football. Now, Christian McCaffrey's gotten his deal, so he's the second highest paid. But either way, that's where your resources are. And I get the thought process, especially at the 1 or the 2 yard line. If we can't pound the football in, what the hell are we doing? We've spent all this money, all this draft capital into this area of the team. That's our identity. We're going to play bully ball, and if we can't get into the end zone, we failed in team building. So I think a lot of it has to do with that. That's how Jason Garrett wanted this team to be. That's how Will McClay and the Joneses have drafted and developed this team to be. That was their identity. I don't think it really has anything to do with the lack of faith in Dak Prescott. It's just, hey, when you're at the 1 or 2 yard line, there's only so many pass plays you can draw up. And we have a top 5 line and a top 2 or 3 running back. Utilize them, right?
So I'll say I 110% agree with what you said. I think I don't know that anyone could articulate it any better than that. Not even Putsy McGee.
Gosh, Putsy, I got you, bro.
And I guess I put us down this road by addressing the goal to go from the 4 and in situations. But what about goal to go or not quite goal to goal, but you're on the 10 and stuff like that? I do feel like anecdotally, before Eric even shared those numbers, that the Cowboys would run the ball with Zeke a little bit more than the average Bear. And that's a situation where, it might work probably more often than the average team because it is Zeke and maybe you catch him by surprise. But I do wonder how much, why the Cowboys pass numbers from the 10 or the 9 or the 8 weren't a little bit higher.
And I do think, to your point with Dak, play action inside the 20 should be the Cowboys' bread and butter because you have that threat constantly with Zeke. And now you also have the running threat of Dak, and it should open things up, whether it's even if you want to go into the flats to Zeke and get him the ball that way. But I think the perfect example of them forcing the run in this situation was the Minnesota Vikings game, where Dak is shredding the Vikings, and they get into the red zone, and what do? They again force the ball to Zeke. And it's not something that was working, but it goes back to this is our identity. It's crunch time. We're trying to go win the game. What are we going to fall back on? Zeke and the offensive line. And that's great at times, but when your quarterback is balling out like he is, and Dak, who is improving year in and year out like he has, I think now it is time to go ahead and put the ball in his hands. And what better than play action? Because you are a little bit hampered. You don't have the full playbook when you're inside the 10 or the 15. But there's so much that you can play off of that I think that's something that Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy should help Dak out a lot with.
How much I'm curious, Eric, Zach, how much does the tight end play a role here in their minds? Because Jason Witten, in some ways he was good in the red zone because he can just get to his spot and the defense would just forget about him. He'd be wide open. But he hasn't for a long time been the guy that's just going to go win a physical battle where you throw it up like some of these young, more slender, but jumpy, springy tight ends. Jimmy Graham, really was the first to, maybe not the first, but was awesome at this. You're just going to throw it up and he's going to go and get it where no one else can. And because it's a tight end, he's probably not matched up on someone who can compete physically size-wise in a passing situation. But Witten doesn't strike me as a guy who could get more than a phone book underneath him when he jumps. So I do wonder how much that dynamic without Witten might change. And I don't know that Blake Jarwin's got, some slam dunk contest vertical, but I imagine that, all 3 of us could jump higher than Jason Witten.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's certainly more that box out kind of guy.
Yeah.
I think they lost that with Dez. I think Dez was
Yeah.
that guy. Dez was their red zone dude who you throw it up to, you let him go make a play. And after 2016, the 2017 season was plagued by injury, and now they don't really have that player offensively. Maybe CeeDee Lamb can help in that regard. They don't really trust the ball to just throw it up in a fade situation to Amari Cooper, but they're also not utilizing Amari Cooper's route running ability. That's something where if you're an elite route runner and you're in a condensed portion of the field, that's where you can win, and that's where they can use Amari Cooper's skill set to their advantage.
yeah. I think that bottom line is when you look at these red zone numbers, you have to say to yourself, the Cowboys had a philosophical flaw under the Garrett regime. And this makes me happy. I mean, you could be frustrated. You could be retroactively frustrated for, wow, how many touchdowns have we left on the field over the last 4 years because we just refuse to trust our quarterback. But looking ahead, having a guy like Mike McCarthy come in, sort of taking the reins off of the Jason Garrett reins off of Kellen Moore, I think we're going to see the offense open up more in the red zone and be more willing to throw the ball, play action, use Dak's legs as a threat as well, whether it be designed or him just tucking it and running. But all of those are great options. So for me, this excites me moving forward. And I also want to note, let's not forget the thing that I mentioned before, the red zone, which is second to Pat Mahomes over the last 2 years. No one's had more touchdown passes outside of the red zone than Dak Prescott. If he can keep that up, which is a credit to himself and a credit to the skill guys, the Amari Coopers of the world, who can take a 20-yard play and turn it into a 45-yard touchdown. But you have all these great skill positions. You added to that with the Yak God himself, CeeDee Lamb. And if you can continue making those big chunk plays and then be able to convert more in the red zone, and you probably will be able to based on the small sample size of Dak being able to do that, but taking the handcuffs off him and allowing him to, this is all really, really good news because he's getting the big play touchdowns. He just hasn't been allowed to show how great he is in the red zone, really.
Zachary?
Yeah, I mean, I agree for the most part, and I do wonder if Blake Jarwin, to your point, Jared, will help with that because certainly, Witten, you could tell last year it wasn't, those abilities were lacking. Maybe 2016 was his last year where he was a legitimate red zone option. There were times where his big-ass body was just he's just able to box out a linebacker, and he's able to go get it. But hopefully Blake Jarwin can help in that regard, and Michael Gallup to an extent. Michael Gallup is that bigger frame receiver on the outside if you're looking for a guy to maybe throw the fade route to, which, I mean, that's not a play I'm in love with unless the timing's just really, you've got it down like Romo and Dez had with the
it's awful.
fade.
It's
But,
awful.
yeah, I mean, otherwise, it's just not a play call that I'm in love with. But I do think it's an area that they could see benefit. But I wouldn't be shocked if they're still handing the ball to Ezekiel Elliott when they're at the 1 or the 2 yard line. And as long as you're not doing it all the time, I don't see a problem with that. I mean, I get that we're in a pass happy, throw the football. That's the sexy way of football. But I mean, it's not like you shouldn't ever run the ball. There are times where it's okay, and that certainly is a time where it's okay. But the play action is something they need to utilize a lot more.
Well, I don't want to even harp on those 1 and 2 yard line numbers. That just highlights it. But the point is, we're talking about the red zone. This starts at the 20 yard line. You don't have to immediately abandon the passing game from the bleeping 20 yard line. It's asinine. And it's not to say you can't run the ball, but the numbers I just gave you, you're 30th in pass rate. You're 32nd in pass rate. You're refusing to throw the ball. You can still run it. You just don't have to run it every damn time from 20 yards out.
Yeah, there's a difference between forcing the run and being less predictable, which is why, again, play action, when teams are expecting you to run it, it's a beautiful thing. And Dak Prescott should be one of the better quarterbacks in the league at that.
One thing I just want to throw out there, when Mike McCarthy was with the Packers, if maybe their offense, and they typically had either a high-performing offense or an offense that was anticipated or expected to perform at a high level. I don't know that there was ever a year at all where they didn't look at the offense as a strength. But at times, the offense isn't in a rhythm or whatever it might be. And I can remember like 3 or 4 years where the offense did take that next step or kick it in the next gear. And one of the reasons why Mike McCarthy would say, well, we got away from the run. And we feel like we're implementing the running game a little more. But I say that to say this. If that translates, now he had Aaron Rodgers, and as good as I think we all believe Dak is, he's not Aaron at peak Aaron. I do wonder if it's going to be the reverse, like than what we're used to, that instead of, gosh, you got to let Dak pass more. I wonder if like by week 4, we're saying, man, I'm loving that we're opening it up, but maybe we should get Zeke more carries, because Mike McCarthy does have a tendency to fall back on the pass a little bit more. And so that's maybe not specific to what we're talking about, but just like, when Eric was bringing up the fundamental strategic flaw and mentioned Mike McCarthy, I wonder if the Mike McCarthy in Green Bay, how much of that we see in Dallas, because that was at times a hurdle he had to overcome, was overcommitting to the pass because he had such a great passer. Here, he doesn't have as good of a passer, although I think he's still got a very good one, but he's got better receivers than he had, other than maybe that Super Bowl year when they had Jordy Nelson, Greg Jennings, Jermichael Finley. I mean, that was a really, really strong pass-catching team, but he didn't always have that in Green Bay like he has here this year.
It's an interesting point. And I also wonder a little bit to that, how much is that Dak possibly checking out of passes? We do have to wonder about, do you have the option when it comes to, is it a pass or is it a run, and he checks out of it at the line of scrimmage? It's possible that maybe there are some passes called and he just decides based on the front that he's seeing, hey, this would be a good chance, an opportunity to run the football. So I wonder if that's something that they still leave in Dak's hands, or if Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy are more, no, this is what I want you to run, and we're not going to give you the leeway to check at the line of scrimmage.
Now, this just popped into my head, so I don't have the numbers on hand to back it up here, but I do think there's also something to – it's not only that you were running the ball so much in the red zone, it's also the way in which you were doing it with your personnel groupings, which was you're throwing a bunch of tight ends out there, you're throwing the fullbacks. Listen, when you're an 11 personnel and you got the defense spread out, and now the box is telling you, hey, we only got 6 guys in here. Okay, now you'll have better, maximize your running instead of just pounding everybody with it. And here comes all the tight ends and the fullbacks. Let's spread people out. And then, okay, now you'll be able to maximize those Zeke runs. And so that's something that I think needs to be in play here as well. Not just how much you're running the ball, but also when you do it, let's make sure you're doing it in an advantageous way to allow you to – maybe you can hand the ball off from the 19-yard line, and because you were in 11 personnel, Zeke can go run all 19 of those yards because there was only 6 guys in the box.
Absolutely. And let's get some more quarterback design runs as well. They had success with those quarterback draws. And what were they doing, to your point? They were in a shotgun, 3 or 4 wide, spread the defense out, then Dak keeps it right up the middle, and we've seen it work to tremendous success in the past.
Just quickly, and I know this changes game to game. Last thing here, just throw out a number. Obviously, the situation dictates this, but all things being equal, how many rushing touches would you like to see Zeke get per game?
20.
Oh, wow, 20.
Yeah.
Okay, I was going to say 14 to 16 would be my wheelhouse. Obviously, if they're trying to milk the clock in the fourth quarter, that number is going to go up. But I just think with the passing attack that they have, unless the team is horrible against the run, they're variables. But I was thinking if he's averaging around 14 to 16 carries per game, I think that's money.
Well, honestly, I would agree with you there. My one thing is you look at it in general, you're looking at 60 to 65 plays. So, I mean, now if you're accounting for Tony Pollard getting some carries in that, then that makes more sense. I would say running the ball, 20 to 22 times total. Pollard gets 6, Zeke gets 15 or so. That's probably nice.
No, that and I am assuming that some rushing plays are going to go elsewhere, whether it's Pollard or Dak.
Gotcha.
So All right, fellas, another week in the books. I miss you guys.
Wonderful.
Miss you more. Can't wait for Screamers baseball.
Happy baseballing.
Love you.
Love you.
There you go. Another week. Just hang with the Nosebleed Seats. Be back next week.